Hey, this is Noah. I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit brief, because I could talk about this for literal hours. One of the conversations of topic that me and my buddy Bryant really enjoy talking about is realizing how much Sega fumbled after the success of the Genesis. In short, there are many instances in Sega's history following the release of the Sega Genesis where they could have ended up being successful. One of the most notable ones being that when Sony was working with Nintendo on a disc-based add-on to the Super Nintendo, and that deal ended up falling through, Sony actually went to Sega, Nintendo's competitor at the time, to offer them the same concept, and Sega told them no. And Sony ended up becoming largely responsible for Sega's leaving the console market. The Sony PlayStation alone did irreparable damage to the Saturn because PlayStation, being 3D, screwed over the Saturn, which was not targeting 3D technology. And on top of that, the notorious E3 press conference where the Saturn was shadow dropped. Nobody was prepared for it. It was expensive, and then Sony literally comes on stage and just says the price tag, and everyone goes crazy. They lost so bad that the Dreamcast couldn't even fix the problem fully. So with all that in mind, it's very entertaining to imagine a situation where Sega ended up staying in the console market and what kind of things we would have seen. As an example, Tomb Raider was originally going to be a Saturn exclusive. But as many people would know, it came out on the PlayStation as well, and the only reason for that was because the publisher realized that the Saturn was kind of a failure, so they would not be able to recoup their costs if they didn't publish it also on the PlayStation. So, we would have seen a time where, if Sega had remained in the console market, where Tomb Raider might have been a Sega franchise. Would have been interesting. But here's something that I found out the other day from an article that apparently there existed a possibility that Shin Megami Tensei would have ended up a Nintendo franchise instead of a Atlas or Sega franchise. I guess the individual who wrote the Megami Tensei books, that the original games that eventually evolved into Shin Megami Tensei as we know it was based on, originally was in talks with Nintendo. I admit I kind of skimmed the details, but from what I gathered, is they kind of briefly discussed it where they were like, yeah, we could show this to our higher-ups and we'll see, maybe we could turn this into a game. And when they came back to him, they were like, it doesn't really fit with our Nintendo image. Maybe we could do one without all of the demons and stuff. And the dude was like, absolutely not, the demons are dope. Paraphrasing. And he ended up not doing it. And that fits. That tracks. Nintendo was very concerned about their image at the time. These days, maybe not so much, considering, ironically, Shin Megami Tensei is almost a Nintendo franchise in the sense that it's been published on Nintendo platforms exclusively more often than it hasn't been. And what I mean by that is that the mainline Shin Megami Tensei series is mostly Nintendo. Shin Megami Tensei 4 was a 3DS exclusive. Shin Megami Tensei 5 was a Switch exclusive. The point that I was trying to make is that Shin Megami Tensei has been on a lot of Nintendo platforms. And it would actually stand to justify that may have been true, that they were in talks with Nintendo about publishing a game. Because maybe their relationship stayed the same and they ended up being in close talks to put it on their platforms. And in case if it was concerning to you, I guess Nintendo would only be concerned about their image from the perspective that they would have been publishing it. But so long as they're not publishing it, it's cool. You can have games on their consoles at the time with demons and all this stuff. They just don't want to be the ones in charge of it because they're concerned about their image. I think it's very interesting to consider if Atlas was not in charge of the Shin Megami Tensei series. We might not have even seen Persona, and maybe Shin Megami Tensei would have ended up one of those franchises that Nintendo left in the dust, like F-Zero. I think it's fair to say that I am very happy and content with the idea that Shin Megami Tensei is a franchise owned by Atlas and therefore owned by Sega. They have done a great job with it so far. And I've enjoyed what I've played of Soul Hackers 2 to completion and Persona 5. I'm looking forward to finishing that. What do you guys think about the news? How would you feel if Nintendo was the one in charge of Shin Megami Tensei? Let me know in the comments. This is Noah. Shin Megami Tensei. See ya.